In the far reaches of the galaxy, where the stars stretched endlessly into the void, the alien world of Xalith stood as a testament to a race far beyond humanity's capabilities. The Xalethians, with their long history of peace, science, and technological advancements, had long viewed the human race as a primitive species struggling with war and conflict on their planet. To them, humanity's repeated failures to achieve lasting peace made them unworthy of interaction with the greater galactic community. Among the most vocal critics of humanity was Lyra, a high-ranking diplomat from Xalith. She was brilliant, composed, and fiercely loyal to her people's ideals. To her, humanity was nothing more than a violent, stubborn species that lacked the wisdom to survive in the galaxy. The idea of humans joining the Galactic Council, a prestigious alliance of advanced races, was a laughable notion. Lyra had witnessed firsthand the destruction humanity had caused in the past, and she firmly believed that they were not ready to be trusted with the affairs of the galaxy. The Galactic Council had tried repeatedly to extend an olive branch to humanity, hoping to integrate them into their ranks. The Council had long recognized the potential of humans, their drive, their creativity, and their resilience. But Lyra was not convinced. The images of war-torn cities of generations living in constant strife were etched into her memory. She had no patience for what she saw as a futile struggle. Despite the repeated requests, Lyra rejected any chance of cooperation. Every time humans were mentioned in council meetings, she would speak out, her voice cold and dismissive. "They will never change," she would say. "Their wars will continue until they destroy themselves. No alliance should be formed with a race that refuses to evolve." But the Galactic Council refused to give up. They saw potential in humanity that Lyra could not understand. They believed that beneath the wars and struggles, there was something more, a glimmer of greatness waiting to be discovered. And so, after years of failed attempts, they appointed one human to try and change Lyra's mind. Isaac Collins was a diplomat from Earth. He was chosen for his calm demeanor, his intelligence, and most of all, his unwavering belief that humanity could change. Isaac had grown up in a world much like the one Lyra described, a world filled with conflict, but also one filled with hope. His own family had been affected by the scars of war, but Isaac refused to be defined by it. Instead, he chose to dedicate his life to peace, working tirelessly to bridge the gap between conflicting sides. When he was chosen for the mission to meet with Lyra and other alien leaders, he knew it would be a difficult task, but he believed in humanity's potential. Isaac had spent years trying to convince others of humanity's worth, and this opportunity was his last chance to prove it. He knew that if he could change Lyra's mind, it would be the first step toward humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council. The moment Isaac arrived on Xalith, he felt the weight of the situation. The planet was a marvel of technology and nature. Vast cities sprawled beneath lush skies, shimmering spires of glass and steel reflecting the light of distant suns. The air was thick with the hum of energy, and the people of Xalith walked with an air of tranquility that seemed impossible on Earth. For Isaac, it was a reminder of the gap that still separated humanity from the rest of the galaxy. But even amidst this paradise, Isaac's thoughts were consumed with one person, Lyra. The alien diplomat had made her disdain for humanity clear on multiple occasions, and Isaac could only wonder what had shaped her so deeply. What had led her to reject humans so thoroughly? As he made his way through the city to the meeting hall, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the expectations on his shoulders. This was no ordinary diplomatic mission. If he succeeded, humanity's place in the galaxy could be secured. If he failed, the consequences could be devastating for Earth and the future of humanity. Inside the Grand Hall, Isaac was greeted by a sea of alien faces, all watching him intently. Lyra stood at the front, her presence commanding and stern. She was everything he had imagined. Tall, with striking features that seemed carved from stone, her eyes sharp and focused. Her gaze fell on Isaac, and for a moment, he felt the weight of her judgment. He knew this was not going to be easy. "Human," Lyra said, her voice cool and unyielding. "I trust you understand the gravity of this meeting. There is little to discuss." Isaac stood tall, his heart racing but his expression calm. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this was the most important. "I understand," he replied, his voice steady. "But I believe there's more to humanity than what you've seen. I've come here not to argue, but to listen, and to show you that we can be more than the wars of our past." Lyra's eyes narrowed, her skepticism evident. "Words will not change what is already known. Your species is a danger to the galaxy. You fight among yourselves, and you destroy all that you touch." Isaac's gaze didn't waver. "Perhaps, but we've also shown the ability to rebuild, to adapt, and to grow. I'm here to prove that humanity is more than its mistakes." For the first time, Lyra paused. There was a flicker in her eyes, a hesitation that she quickly masked. She had heard words like this before, promises of change that never came to fruition. Still, she could not deny that Isaac's tone was different. He wasn't like the others she had met. He spoke with conviction, with a quiet strength that made her doubt her own certainty for a brief moment. But that was all. The walls she had built over years of experience remained unshaken. The meeting would proceed, but for Isaac, this was just the beginning. Lyra's rejection of humanity would not be easy to overcome, but Isaac believed in his species, and he believed in the power of hope. And with that belief, he was ready to face whatever came next. Isaac Collins had never been one to shy away from a challenge. Growing up in a world where war was a constant shadow over the lives of its people, Isaac had learned early on that peace wasn't simply a wish. It was something to be worked for, fought for, and sometimes even sacrificed for. When he had received the call from the Galactic Council, he knew that this mission was more than just another diplomatic negotiation. This was humanity's chance to show that they could rise above their troubled history and stand as equals among the stars. The human race had long been seen as a fractured species, constantly at war with itself. Their wars were bloody and seemingly endless, and many alien races had written them off as a lost cause. The Xalethians, in particular, had long been vocal about their rejection of humanity. And it was this species, the Xalethians, led by the proud and unyielding diplomat, Lyra, that Isaac would have to persuade. But how could a single man convince a race that humanity was capable of greatness? Isaac was seated in a small transport vessel that hovered quietly as it made its way toward the heart of Xeleth's capital. The bustling city below him shimmered under the glow of alien architecture. The buildings rose in sleek, elegant spires, towering over streets lined with soft, glowing lights. There was no sign of the chaos and destruction that plagued Earth, no lingering scars of battle, no evidence of any conflict. Isaac glanced out the window, wondering how anyone could believe that humans were capable of contributing to such a peaceful world. He had spent years working as a peacekeeper on Earth, negotiating ceasefires between factions, brokering treaties between warring nations. He knew humanity's faults better than most, but he also knew something the galaxy didn't see: humanity's potential. He wasn't here to deny humanity's past mistakes. He was here to show that they could overcome them, that they could learn from them. But to do that, he needed to break through the walls that Lyra had built around her heart. The transport landed smoothly, and Isaac stepped out, his boots softly tapping the ground. He was met by several Xalethian escorts, who led him toward the council chambers. As they walked, Isaac couldn't help but notice the sheer beauty of the planet. Lush gardens stretched for miles, their colors vibrant in ways that Earth's plants couldn't replicate. The air smelled sweet, almost like a blend of jasmine and fresh rain. Yet, despite the beauty of this world, Isaac couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong here. He was an outsider, a stranger from a planet that had yet to find its way. But he refused to let that define him. He had a mission, and it was one that would shape the future of humanity. The doors to the council chambers opened, and Isaac was led inside. The room was vast, filled with alien diplomats from various worlds, each species unique and strange in its own way. But in the center of it all stood Lyra. She was tall, regal, her eyes sharp with a focus that could cut through steel. Isaac could feel the weight of her gaze as it settled on him. Without a word, she motioned for him to approach, and he did. The room fell silent as the two of them stood face to face. "I trust you understand the gravity of this moment." Lyra's voice was smooth, cold, and calculating. "You are the representative of a species that has not earned the right to sit at this table." Isaac's heart quickened, but his voice remained steady. "I understand. But I'm here not to demand a seat, but to show you that humanity has earned the right to try." Lyra's expression didn't change. "You speak of change, but your species has shown no signs of it. Your wars are endless, and your leaders can't even agree on a single path forward. Why should I believe that you are different from the others who have failed?" Isaac knew that this was going to be harder than he had anticipated. The deep-seated belief that humanity was irredeemable was something he had to face head-on. But he also knew that words alone wouldn't change Lyra's mind. He had to do more. He had to show her, not just tell her. "I can't change the past," Isaac replied, his voice calm yet firm. "But I can speak to you about the present, about the humans I've known, about the people who fight to create peace, to heal, to build. Every person has a choice, and those who choose to make a difference, to rise above the darkness, have proven that humanity is more than its mistakes." Lyra's eyes narrowed, skepticism still evident in her gaze. "Your words are no different from the others who came before you, but they were empty, promises made without substance. So tell me, Isaac Collins, why should I believe you?" Isaac took a deep breath, then looked Lyra straight in the eye. "Because I am one of those people, and I am willing to fight for what is right. I've dedicated my life to peace. I've watched as wars destroyed everything I held dear. I've seen my people at their worst, but I've also seen them at their best. I've seen humans risk everything for someone they don't know, simply because it's the right thing to do." Lyra was quiet for a moment, and Isaac could tell that his words had begun to resonate, even if just slightly. She had spent years surrounded by others who saw humanity as a lost cause, but Isaac's sincerity, his belief in his people, was different. "You still haven't answered my question," Lyra said after a long pause. "Why should I believe in humanity?" Isaac's answer was simple, yet it held the weight of everything he had fought for. "Because I believe in us. I believe that despite our flaws, we can be better. We just need the chance." The room was silent as the alien diplomats watched the exchange. Isaac could feel the eyes of the council on him, but his focus remained on Lyra. He had given his heart to his words, and now it was time to see if they could break through the walls of doubt she had built so long ago. For a long moment, Lyra didn't speak. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I will give you a chance, Isaac Collins," she said, her voice softer than before. "But your people must prove that they are worthy of this chance. The Galactic Council will not accept failure again." Isaac smiled, a sense of relief washing over him. "Thank you." As the meeting continued, Isaac knew this was only the beginning. But for the first time, he felt like humanity had a real opportunity to prove itself, and he was ready to fight for it, no matter the cost. Isaac sat quietly in the council chamber, surrounded by the leaders of different alien races. The air was thick with tension. He had spent hours preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, he couldn't help but feel a wave of uncertainty. Lyra's skepticism was clear, and the weight of humanity's future seemed to hang on his every word. The Galactic Council, a body made up of representatives from the most advanced species in the universe, had seen the human race as a problem for decades. The Salethians, especially, had no faith in humanity. Isaac had been told countless times that humanity was a lost cause, that Earth was a danger to the greater good of the galaxy. But here he was, trying to change that perception, standing before beings whose power, knowledge, and technology far exceeded anything humanity had achieved. Lyra, standing at the front of the chamber, had already dismissed Isaac's initial offer for peace. She stood tall, her presence commanding, her gaze piercing through the room with a cold intensity. It was clear that she was not someone easily swayed by emotion or words. Her people had seen the destruction caused by humanity, and Lyra's resistance to any form of cooperation was rooted in years of observation and judgment. Isaac, however, had one advantage that none of the other diplomats or representatives had: his belief in humanity. He knew that Earth had its flaws, but he also knew that humans were capable of change, of growth. He had seen it in his own life, in the people around him, and he was determined to prove it to the galaxy. As the meeting began, Isaac took a deep breath, looking out at the council members, all eyes on him. There was no turning back now. Lyra began speaking in a calm but firm tone. "We have already given your species a chance. The evidence is clear. Humans are not ready for the responsibility that comes with galactic unity. Your world is fractured, your leaders divided, and your people are at war with each other. You have yet to prove that you can even manage peace within your own borders, let alone contribute to the greater good of the galaxy." Isaac felt a pang of frustration, but remained composed. He had prepared for this. He had heard these same arguments before, but he wasn't going to let them define humanity's future. "I agree," Isaac said, his voice steady. "Humanity has failed in many ways. But failure doesn't define us. It's how we respond to it, how we learn from it, that matters. And that's what I'm asking for, a chance to prove that we are more than our mistakes." Lyra's expression didn't change. "You speak of learning, but how many more lives must be lost before you learn? How many more civilizations must suffer because of your species' inability to control itself?" Isaac's heart sank at her words, but he knew he couldn't give in. He had to be the voice of reason, not just for humanity, but for all the people who believed that peace was possible. "We've lost too many," Isaac replied quietly, his voice carrying a sense of grief. "And that's why we fight for peace now. Humanity may have failed in the past, but we are trying to build something better. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone we share this universe with. But we need the chance to prove that." Lyra stared at Isaac, her gaze unwavering. "What makes you think the galaxy should trust you? You cannot even trust your own people. Your world is in chaos." Isaac knew that his words had to be more than just promises. He had to give Lyra something tangible to hold on to, something that could convince her that humanity was capable of great things, despite its flaws. He took a step forward, gathering his thoughts. "I know that trust must be earned, Lyra, and I'm not asking for it to be given freely. But I ask you to consider one thing. If you had been born on Earth, had lived through the wars, the struggles, the hardships, you would see what I see in my people. Yes, we are flawed. But in the face of hardship, we find ways to overcome. We rebuild. We evolve." For the first time, Lyra's expression flickered with something that resembled doubt. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but Isaac caught it. Her defenses, built up over years of watching humanity's failures, were starting to crack, just a little, but she didn't let it show for long. "You speak of rebuilding," she said, her tone still cold. "But what have you truly built? What tangible proof do you have that humanity is capable of changing its ways?" Isaac paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "There are people on Earth, right now, who have dedicated their lives to peace. People who risk everything to help others, to heal wounds, both physical and emotional. You won't find their names in history books, but they are out there. And I'm one of them." Isaac didn't need to elaborate. He knew that Lyra wouldn't be convinced by stories alone, but perhaps in time she would see the truth of his words. Humanity was more than its mistakes, more than the wars and the destruction. They were a people capable of change, of compassion, of building something better. The council room was silent as Lyra considered Isaac's words. The other representatives shifted in their seats, watching the exchange with varying degrees of curiosity. It was rare for a human to speak so passionately about their species, and even rarer for one to stand before Lyra, the unyielding Celethian diplomat, and challenge her beliefs. Finally, After what seemed like an eternity, Lyra spoke. "You have made your case, Isaac Collins, but your species has a long way to go before you can earn the trust of the Galactic Council." Isaac nodded, knowing this was just the beginning. "I understand, but I ask that you give us the chance to prove ourselves. A single chance. That's all we need." Lyra's gaze softened, just slightly. "Perhaps, but be warned, human. If you fail, there will be no second chance." Isaac met her eyes, his resolve unwavering. "Won't fail." As the meeting came to an end, Isaac felt a mix of relief and determination. He knew that this was only the first step, but it was a step forward. He had managed to make Lyra reconsider her rigid stance, and in doing so, he had earned something more valuable than her approval. He had earned her attention, and that, Isaac believed, was all humanity needed. The days that followed Isaac's meeting with Lyra were tense, to say the least. While Lyra had given him the chance to prove humanity's worth, she had made it clear that she remained unconvinced. The council, too, seemed skeptical, but they were watching Isaac closely, waiting for any sign of weakness, any mistake that could confirm their belief that humanity was not yet ready to be part of the greater galactic community. Isaac spent the next few days preparing. He read every report, watched every speech, and studied every possible approach that might win Lyra over. But no matter how much he learned, or how many strategies he tried to devise, it always came back to one question. How could he convince someone like Lyra, who had seen nothing but failure and chaos in humanity, that they were capable of more? Lyra, for her part, remained distant and cold. She conducted her meetings with the other council members, as though Isaac's presence was a mere formality. Yet Isaac noticed something. When their paths crossed, there was a brief flicker of curiosity in her eyes, something he hadn't seen before. It was subtle, but it was there. And for Isaac, that small spark was enough to keep him going. One evening, as Isaac was walking through one of Zalith's vast gardens, he found himself lost in thought. The alien world was peaceful, its flora and fauna unfamiliar but beautiful. The air was crisp and clean, filled with a scent that reminded Isaac of the forests back home on Earth. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding him, a deep sense of longing and isolation settled over him. Isaac had always been someone who believed in the potential for good in all people. He had spent years trying to broker peace, to find common ground where others saw only division. But standing on this alien world, trying to convince someone who had built her life on the belief that humanity was doomed, he felt like he was fighting an uphill battle. Was he truly making a difference, or was he just another dreamer clinging to an impossible hope? As he walked, lost in these thoughts, he heard a soft voice behind him. "You are far from the council chambers, human." Isaac turned to see Lyra standing a few feet away. She was as composed as ever, her eyes sharp, but for the first time, there was no trace of the icy judgment he had become accustomed to. She stood in the twilight, bathed in the soft glow of the alien gardens, her features softer in the fading light. She looked human in that moment. For just a brief second, Isaac saw not a diplomat of a faraway world, but a person who had lived through her own struggles, her own disappointments, her own battles. "I needed some fresh air," Isaac replied, his voice steady but soft. "It's peaceful here." Lyra nodded but didn't speak at once. She glanced around the garden, her gaze lingering on the alien plants that seemed to hum with an energy all their own. "You humans are strange," she said, her tone still guarded, but there was something more to it now. "You destroy your world, and yet you fight so hard to rebuild it." Isaac watched her carefully. This was the opening he had been waiting for. "We do fight, and sometimes it feels like we're fighting ourselves. But that's not all we are. We also rebuild our cities, our communities, ourselves." Lyra's expression remained unreadable. "And you think that's enough? Rebuilding can only take you so far before you're lost to the past." Isaac looked out at the horizon, where the setting sun painted the sky in hues of purple and orange. He thought of his own journey, his own struggles. Maybe it's not enough, but it's something. We've been through so much, and yet we continue to try. That's the essence of humanity. We don't give up. Even when we fail, we get back up and keep trying. There was silence between them for a long moment. Isaac didn't look at Lyra, but he felt her presence beside him, steady and unyielding. The wind shifted, rustling the leaves of the alien trees, and Isaac wondered what she was thinking. Did she hear the truth in his words, or was it just more empty promises in her eyes? "I've seen your kind destroy each other," Lyra said quietly, almost to herself. "I've seen the chaos you create. Why should I believe that humanity can change?" Isaac took a deep breath. "Because we can. I've seen it. I've seen the people who rise above the violence, who choose to do what's right instead of what's Sci. I've seen them make a difference. I've seen humanity at its worst, yes, but I also seen it at its best." Lyra turned her gaze to him, and for the first time, Isaac saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. It was fleeting, like a shadow passing over her face, but it was there. She wasn't completely immune to the idea that maybe, just maybe, Isaac had a point. "There's no simple solution, human," she said softly, her voice almost gentle. "You can't erase the past, and you can't change everything at once. But perhaps you're right. Perhaps there is something more to you." Isaac's heart lifted at her words, though he knew better than to get his hopes up too quickly. Lyra was a diplomat, a representative of her people, and her loyalty lay with them. Her hesitation, however, was progress. It meant that the walls she had built around her heart were starting to crack. "I'm not asking for everything to change overnight," Isaac said quietly. "But if you give us the chance, I'll show you that we can be more than you think." Lyra regarded him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a small sigh, she stepped back slightly, as if the weight of the conversation had taken its toll. "I'm not sure I can believe in your kind the way you believe in them," she said, her voice softer now. "But I will give you one thing. A chance. Prove me wrong." Isaac Collins. For a brief moment, the two stood there, staring at each other in the fading light. Isaac knew this wasn't the end of the battle. It was just the beginning. But Lyra had given him something far more valuable than approval. She had given him the opportunity to prove humanity's worth. And in that moment, Isaac felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for a future where humanity could stand tall, side by side with the stars. Isaac stood before the council once more, the weight of the galaxy's expectations pressing down on him. The room, filled with alien representatives from across the stars, was eerily silent. All eyes were on him, and in that moment, Isaac could feel every gaze, every thought, focused on the single task at hand. This was no ordinary meeting. This was humanity's chance to prove it was worthy of a place in the Galactic Council. The Council had agreed to give humanity a chance, but that chance was quickly becoming a test of Isaac's resolve. The Telethians, led by the unyielding Lyra, had made it clear that they were watching closely. There could be no mistakes. Humanity had to show, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they could be trusted with the future of the galaxy. Isaac had no illusions. He knew that the Council's decision would not come easily. But this was humanity's moment. He could feel it in his bones. This was the beginning of something bigger, something that could change everything for Earth and its place among the stars. The tension in the room was palpable as Lyra stood at the front of the chamber, her expression as cold and unyielding as ever. She had not changed her opinion of humanity. She still believed that the human race was a threat, that their history of violence and war made them unworthy of joining the Council. But Isaac had learned something over the past few days. Despite her cold exterior, Lyra wasn't invulnerable. Beneath her sharp eyes and calm demeanor, there was a person who had her own fears, her own struggles. And Isaac had come to believe that if he could just reach her, show her that humanity was more than its past mistakes, he could change everything. Today, however, would not be about words. It would be about action. As the council members watched, a representative from the Rekor, a fierce and warlike species, stood up. He was tall, his body a mass of muscle, covered in dark scales that glimmered under the chamber's lights. His voice was deep, resonating through the room. "We've heard your pleas, human," the Rekor representative growled, his eyes narrowing as he addressed Isaac. "But I am not convinced. Your people are nothing but destroyers. I have seen the damage you caused on your own world. I have seen the warships you built. You claim to want peace, but your actions say otherwise." Isaac knew the history the Rekor spoke of. Humanity had fought wars, built weapons of unimaginable power, and torn their world apart. The scars of those battles still marked Earth's surface, and the echoes of those conflicts still rang in the hearts of its people. But Isaac also knew that humanity was changing, that there were those who had fought against that darkness, who had worked tirelessly to rebuild and make things right. "We don't ask for forgiveness," Isaac said, standing tall in front of the council. "But we do ask for a chance to prove ourselves. The weapons you speak of were not made with peace in mind, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from our mistakes. We can change, and we are changing." The Rekor grunted but didn't back down. "Words. Always words. You humans love to talk, but talk doesn't stop the bloodshed. Talk doesn't stop the destruction." Isaac's mind raced. He had to show them. He had to prove that humanity could be trusted, that it wasn't the destroyer that the galaxy believed it to be. "Then let's show you," Isaac said, his voice steady and clear. "Let's show you what humanity is capable of." Without waiting for permission, Isaac stepped forward. A low murmur rippled through the council chamber, but Isaac's focus remained sharp. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she observed him closely. She had been waiting for him to make a mistake. She had been waiting for the opportunity to strike, to prove that humanity was as dangerous as she had always believed. Isaac reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. The council members watched in silence as he placed it on the ground before them. With a soft click, the device powered on, projecting a hologram into the air. The image before them was of a destroyed city, ruined buildings, crumbled streets, and scattered debris. "This is one of our past mistakes," Isaac said, his voice somber. "This is the result of one of the many wars we fought. But it's also the story of how humanity rebuilt. The people here, our people, didn't give up. They worked together, regardless of their differences, to rebuild. They didn't hide from their past. They learned from it." The council watched the hologram in silence. Isaac let the image hang in the air for a moment before he continued. "We're not perfect. No one is. But we can choose to be better. We can choose to help others instead of destroy them." The room was quiet for a long time. Even Lyra remained still, her expression unreadable as she watched the hologram. The Rekor representative stood with his arms crossed, his gaze unwavering. "What does this prove, human?" The Rekor finally spoke. "That you can rebuild after destroying yourselves." Isaac didn't flinch. "It proves that we have the strength to rise from our failures, that we can learn from them. That's the difference between humanity and other species. We don't hide from our flaws. We face them head-on and fight to make things right." The room remained quiet for a moment longer. The council members exchanging glances. Lyra's gaze shifted from Isaac to the hologram and back again. Isaac could see the doubt in her eyes. She wasn't convinced, not yet, but she was listening. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Your actions today will determine whether or not you are worthy of a place in the Galactic Council. You may have shown us your ability to rebuild, but you have not yet shown us your ability to unite. You have one more task ahead of you, Isaac Collins. You must prove that humanity can work with others, that it can overcome its divisions and stand together." Isaac nodded. He had expected this. It wasn't enough to show that humanity could rebuild. They had to prove they could build bridges with others. They had to show that they could work together, regardless of their differences. And Isaac was ready. He knew that humanity could rise to the challenge. He believed it with all his heart. "I'll prove it," Isaac said, his voice filled with determination. "I'll show you that humanity can unite, not just on Earth, but with the rest of the galaxy. We'll build alliances, not just with words, but with actions." The council was silent, but Isaac could feel the eyes of every representative on him. This was the moment. The test had begun, and Isaac was ready to lead humanity through it. The future of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, depended on what came next. Isaac stood at the edge of the council chamber, looking out at the stars. The vastness of space was both awe-inspiring and intimidating. In the silence of the room, he could hear the faint hum of the galactic engines outside the station, a reminder of how far humanity had come and how far it still had to go. The last few days had been a whirlwind of meetings, discussions, and debates, but nothing had gone as he had hoped. Lyra, despite her softening demeanor, still remained unconvinced. The task to prove humanity's worth was far from complete. The council had been watching, waiting for Isaac and humanity to take the next step. Their skepticism was not unfounded. Humanity had given them no reason to believe that they could be trusted. But Isaac knew that this was their chance. If he could show the council that humans could rise above their flaws, work with others, and build something meaningful together, humanity would have a place in the galaxy. He needed to do more than just talk. This time, he needed to act. The moment came unexpectedly, as it often does. The Council had planned a demonstration, a joint mission where representatives from various species would work together to solve a complex, galaxy-wide problem. A rogue asteroid was headed for a planet in a distant system, and the Council needed all the help it could get to prevent catastrophe. It was the perfect opportunity for Isaac to prove humanity's worth, not through speeches or promises, but through action. This was his chance to show that humanity could unite with others, solve problems, and build something that benefited the greater good. The problem was, Isaac wasn't sure if humanity was ready for such a high-stakes mission. Earth was still divided, still struggling with its own challenges. But as he watched the council members prepare for the mission, he realized that this was not just about humanity's past or its failures. It was about the future, about the choices they would make moving forward. "Are you ready, Isaac?" Lyra's voice interrupted his thoughts, cutting through the silence. She stood at the door of the council chamber, her gaze fixed on him. Isaac turned to face her. There was something different in her eyes now, something softer, more open. Her usual coldness had been replaced by a flicker of uncertainty, as though she was waiting to see what he would do next. "I don't know if we're ready," Isaac replied honestly, his voice steady. "But this is the chance we've been given, and I believe in humanity's ability to rise to the occasion." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. "Perhaps that's all we can ask for. Hope. Hope." Isaac knew that was the key. It was the one thing that had kept humanity moving forward, even in its darkest times. They always had hope that things could be better, that they could change, no matter how many times they fell. And now, in the face of the galaxy's greatest challenges, Isaac had to show the council that this hope was not just a dream. It was a driving force, one that could unite humanity and bring them into a new era. The mission to prevent the asteroid collision was difficult, but it was a team effort. Isaac had been paired with several alien representatives, each from different species, each with their own unique skills. Together, they had to find a way to divert the asteroid from its deadly path. The tension was high as they worked, every second counting and every move critical. The humans, the Xalethians, the Rekor, and the other species worked together seamlessly, their combined efforts pulling the asteroid off course just in time. As the operation came to a close, the team stood together on the bridge of the Council's flagship. The asteroid was no longer a threat, and the planet was saved. Isaac looked around at the team, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Despite their differences, despite the skepticism, the doubts, and the distrust, they had succeeded. For the first time since he had arrived, Isaac allowed himself to relax. The work wasn't done yet, but this was the first real success. He had shown the council that humans could work with others, that they could overcome their past and contribute to the greater good. Lyra walked up to Isaac as the others celebrated their success. She stood beside him, her gaze still sharp, but now there was a quiet respect in her eyes. "You did it," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Your people did it." Isaac turned to her, surprised by the change in her tone. "We did it together, all of us." Lyra nodded slowly. "Perhaps I was wrong about humanity. Perhaps you do have a place here, in the galaxy. But I need to see more. This was one mission, one success. The future will be the true test." Isaac smiled. "I'll be ready for that test, Lyra. Humanity will be ready." There was a brief pause, and then Lyra gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I hope so, Isaac. I hope so." As the Council's flagship made its way back to the heart of the galaxy, Isaac felt a sense of hope rise within him. The journey ahead would not be easy, but this was a turning point. Humanity had taken its first step into the stars, not as conquerors, but as partners. And for the first time in a long while, Isaac believed that they were truly capable of change. The mission had been a success, but the real work was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there was much more to prove. But for Isaac, and for humanity, this was the moment that mattered. They had taken a step forward, and there was no turning back now. The stars outside the Council flagship stretched endlessly into the dark expanse of space. Isaac stood by the observation window, his eyes tracing the distant lights of faraway worlds. He had never imagined that he would be standing here, not as a visitor, not as a diplomat from a fractured world, but as a representative of humanity. The mission had been a success, and the Council had finally given humanity a chance, one that they had earned through their actions, not just their words. It had been a long, difficult journey to this point, and Isaac knew that this was just the beginning. They had proven that humanity could work together with other species, that they were capable of setting aside their differences for the greater good. The asteroid had been diverted, the planet saved, and for the first time, Isaac could see a future where humans weren't just struggling to survive, but contributing to something bigger than themselves. But the journey ahead would be far from easy. The Council was watching, waiting for the next step, and Isaac was determined to show them that humanity was worthy of a place among the stars. As the ship sailed through the galaxy, Isaac found himself reflecting on the changes he had seen, not just in the galaxy, but in himself. When he had first arrived on Xalith, he had been filled with doubt. Could he really change the minds of beings who had lived for centuries, who had seen countless civilizations rise and fall? Could humanity, with all its flaws, truly earn a place in this vast and ancient galaxy? The answer, Isaac now believed, was yes. But it wasn't going to be easy. Humanity would need to continue proving itself, showing the Council that they could overcome their past mistakes, that they could be a force for good in the galaxy. But for the first time, Isaac felt a sense of confidence, a belief that humanity could rise to the challenge. As Isaac walked through the corridors of the flagship, he felt a shift in the way the other Council members regarded him. The skepticism was still there, but it was tempered by something else: respect. The Xalithians, the Rekor, and the other species that had once looked down on humanity were beginning to see something different in Isaac's people. They were seeing a race that could grow, that could change, that could make a difference. Lyra, as always, was a steady presence in his mind. The Xalithian diplomat had been his greatest challenge, but in some ways, she had also become his greatest ally. The cold and dismissive attitude she had once shown him had slowly given way to something more. She had seen humanity's potential, not just through Isaac's words, but through their actions. And while she had not yet fully embraced the idea of humanity joining the Galactic Council, Isaac could see that her heart was slowly changing. He thought back to their last conversation, the one where Lyra had admitted that humanity might have a place in the galaxy after all. It had been a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Isaac knew that Lyra still had her doubts, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes now. She no longer saw humanity as a lost cause. She saw them as a species capable of redemption. Isaac had been invited to a meeting with Lyra and the Council to discuss the next steps for humanity's future in the galaxy. The moment had finally arrived. It was time to take the next step, to solidify humanity's place in this new era. As he entered the council chamber, Isaac's gaze fell on Lyra. She stood at the front of the room, as composed as ever, but this time, there was something different in her expression. Her eyes met Isaac's, and for the first time, he saw a genuine smile on her face, a smile that spoke not just of respect, but of something deeper, something like trust. The room grew quiet as Isaac took his seat at the table. The council members, all of them vastly different from one another, watched as Lyra spoke. "Humanity has shown us something," she began, her voice calm but firm. "They have shown us that they are capable of change. They have proven that, despite their past mistakes, they can work with others, they can contribute to the greater good of the galaxy. And for that reason, I believe it is time for the Galactic Council to accept humanity into our fold." Isaac's heart skipped a beat. The words he had hoped for were finally spoken. Humanity had earned its place. The Council had decided. But as Lyra continued, Isaac realized that this wasn't just about the Council's acceptance, it was about something much bigger. However, Lyra continued, "This is not the end. This is only the beginning. Humanity must continue to prove that it is worthy of the responsibility that comes with this honor. You must show the galaxy that your species can lead, that you can stand tall alongside the other great civilizations, not just in times of peace, but in times of conflict as well." Isaac nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This wasn't a free pass, it was a challenge. The Council was giving humanity a chance, but it was up to them to make the most of it. Isaac knew that the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but for the first time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Humanity had proven that it could rise above its past, and now it was time to prove that it could shape the future. Lyra turned to Isaac and spoke again, her voice softer this time. "You have done well, Isaac Collins. You have shown us that humanity has the potential to be more than just its past mistakes, and for that, I am willing to give you this chance. I only ask that you continue to prove that you are worthy of it." Isaac stood, his heart swelling with pride. He had done it. Humanity had done it. They had earned their place among the stars. But he also knew that this was just the beginning. There was still so much to be done, so much to prove. "We will," Isaac said, his voice filled with determination. "We will prove it, every day, in everything we do." As the council meeting came to a close, Isaac stepped outside into the bright light of the flagship's deck. The stars stretched before him, endless and full of promise. Humanity had a place in this galaxy, and now it was time for them to prove that they deserved it. The future was theirs to shape, and Isaac knew that together, they could build something incredible. The journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, Isaac felt confident that humanity was ready for whatever the galaxy had in store.